Meet Victor Antonio, keynote speaker, TV host, author of 9 books, but more importantly, sales expert. Victor was kind enough to reach deep into his coveted sales book library to talk us through his top 4 sales books. Let's jump into book number 1.
As I approached this task, I said to myself, I want to talk about my philosophy of sales and how I developed the philosophy of sales. And so book number 1, this one's going to kind of surprise a lot of people because I'm sure they haven't heard of this book or even thought about something like this. This is a book by Ayn Rand. Now, if you don't know who Ayn Rand is the founder of the philosophy of Objectivism, and she is my favorite philosopher, like bar none, my favorite philosopher. And she's, in her books, her most popular book is Atlas Shrugged. And the second probably is Fountainhead. If you've not read any of this book, at least read the Fountainhead. When I came across Ayn Rand, she talked about the several books, but one book that really stood out was the Virtue of Selfishness. And I saw the title, like, what? Virtue of Selfishness? And she distinguished selfishness between self-interest. Selfishness is when you do something and you don't care if it hurts somebody else. And the virtue of self-interest, I should say, is you want to be all about you as long as you don't hurt anybody else. And I've always loved that philosophy. Part of her philosophy, and it's found in this book, is the value for value philosophy. If I offer you value, there's nothing wrong with me receiving value in return. Think about that from a sales standpoint, because I always tell people I'm the ultimate capitalist in the truest and purest form. We're talking Milton Friedman, Adam Smith, Wealth of the Nation type of, capitalism, which is if I provide value, if I bring a product or a service to you that will help you grow your business, why shouldn't I get a commission? And now tie that in with self-interest. I'm doing that because I'm trying to help people, and it's okay if I think of myself when doing that. Now, if I knew my product sucked and I still tried to sell it to you, that's not value for value, and that's not real capitalism. So in here, I just want to highlight one chapter because I think this is part of my moral code, as she always puts. This one's titled, Why Businessmen Should Be Honest. Here's what she says. She points out correctly that lying does the liar harm. Well, think about that. Lying does the liar harm, but her ultimate argument is that lying is wrong because it is usually harmful to society. Do you see what I mean? It's all about, if you're going to sell something, it's because you're trying to help. I sell a lot of sales training, it's because I'm trying to help. If I do a keynote, it's because I'm trying to help. So that's book number 1. That kind of that's the cement. If I can lay a foundation to building my philosophical sales house, that's the foundation. Book number 2, numero 2. And this is a rare one, the dollarization discipline. Now, let's make this one short. I believe unless you can quantify value, it kind of doesn't mean anything. It's like art. It's very subjective. The dollarization principle is how do you tie your features, your benefits, what you're offering to some type of tangible, quantifiable number. Now, I always say I have something called the value trinity. There's only 3 ways to grow your business. Or 3 things to focus on to grow your business. Increase revenue, reduce costs, or expand market share. That's it. Increase revenue, reduce costs, or expand market share. With the dollarization principle, what it's talking about is how do you tie your features benefits to either one of those or all 3. So if I can tie my feature benefit to increase revenue, reduce costs, or expand market share, I am implementing the dollarization discipline. Now, here's a surprising one. I got the first print. Oh, this is out of the box. I'll be shocked if anybody's heard of this one. For those of you who are Mad Men fans of the series Mad Men, by the way, this is 1960, the original, Ernest Dichter, The Strategy of Desire. Let me tell you why this book is special. First of all, when you watch the series Mad Men, it's based on Ernest Dichter's work. Ernest Dichter is considered the father of motivation research. Now, I'm not talking motivation research like in, woohoo, you're the best, you're the greatest. No, I'm not talking about that. He's talking about why people buy. Like, this is like the godfather of why people buy. And Ernest Dichter had a line that just, when you read a line, you're like, okay, that just, my head hurts. He says, this is what he said, we must make people constructively discontent in order for them to buy. Now, think about this. Constructively discontent. Now, he didn't just say discontent, and that would just make people angry or piss them off. But if you make them constructively discontent, they're more likely to want to buy. Now, remember, this is 1960. Before anybody else, before like spin selling and anybody else who talks about creating urgency, Ernest Dichter saying, how do you create that discontent? Now, here's what's powerful about this philosophy. If you understand how to make people discontent, in other words, highlight what they're missing out on. For example, when we talk about the dollarization principle, back to book number 2, we could talk about return on investment. But now let's flip to Ernest Dichter. Ernest Dichter will probably say, well, let's not just look at return on investment. Let's look at cost, like a COI instead of ROI. Let's look at the COI, which is the cost of inaction. What if you don't do it? What's that really going to cost you? And that's how you create that sense of urgency, which is why I recommend the strategy of desire. Book number 4, a sleeper. By the way, before I show you book number 4, I have to make this statement because a lot of people don't know this. I'm kind of the opposite. I'm a contrarian in the way that every 6 months I purge books. So I have something called the golden shelf, which is really 3 shelves of books. And that's it. The most I have in my bookshelf right now is probably about 45 to 50 books. And people were like surprised by that because I'm quite the reader. And I'm like, if it doesn't make the golden shelf, it doesn't make the golden shelf. So these books have made the golden shelf and hung around, probably top shelf. And so this one is a sleeper. And this one was written a few years back. I'm about to look at it real quick, just 1996. Okay, so we're talking almost 30 years ago. When I first came across this book, and I finally got to meet this gentleman. His name is, this is Kevin Hogan, and it's called The Psychology of Persuasion, How to Persuade Others to Your Way of Thinking. He's now Dr. Kevin Hogan. So if he sees this, Dr. Kevin Hogan. This is by far, undoubtedly, in my eyes, the best mashup of influence, persuasion, and sales. And he has something in there called the Persuasion Framework, which is just an amazing book. And so it's almost like, if you think of Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, I think this one took it a step further, added 3 more rules. I think he had 6 rules. He added 3 more, and then he layered in a sales/persuasion framework, which makes it a very powerful book. And I bring this book up, and people are like, never heard of it. I'm just telling you, worth the read, worth the money.